YouTube. So as we're coming to an end of the summer, I wanted to showcase the books I read in July and August, because I didn't do a July wrap up, and I was like, why not do a combo July and August video? So I have my notebook here where I kept a track of all the different reading events and books I read over the last 2 months. And so in July, the main reading event I was participating in was the Deck of TBR-a-thon. So I kept track of all the different books, and so I kept track of because Deck of TBR-a-thon is when you draw a card and that gives you a prompt. And so there's 3 different prompts you could do to earn points. And so I kept track of the card I drew, the points, and the title and the author, all because I was going to I was going to post, not post it, because you had a website you could go to, so you could keep track of, your team. You were on either the team TBR or the Mood Readers, and I wrote all this down and then didn't, same as last year, I participated in the event, but I didn't post my points for my team, but in a way. So I read a total of 33 books in this month, and I noticed compared to August, where I read 22 books, and I was busy in August as well. I had several trips that I was going on, but I noticed when I have something like that that's driving me, like this kind of like competition within myself to see how much I could get through, I noticed like an uptick in the books I read. So yeah, I read a total of 33 books, and I don't know how many points that was, because like I said, I didn't end up posting all of the books, because like I kept putting it off, and then by the end of the month, I was like, oh no, there's too many. There's too many to sit down and enter all of them. But there's always next year. And then I also participated in Jane Austen July, a long-running event, and I read Emma for that one. And then for my favorite books of July, I pulled out some like nonfiction and fiction. And I noticed, now that, we're in September and it's, July was way back when, I have a little bit more perspective, I feel like, on the books that are more memorable, that have stuck with me, since I read them 2 months ago or so. But this one I would have picked as my favorite. I feel like no matter when, I would be talking about my July reading wrap up. But this is Especially Father by Gladys Taber. I had a different edition of this, but when I went to it was a new to me bookstore in Portland. It's I think it's called the Crooked House, and they're only open on Saturdays. So I haven't gone there in all the time I've been living here. But all their books seem to have this plastic wrap, and they're all older books, often out of print books. And it's such a cool store. I wish they were open more than just I think it's Saturday morning or something. So I happened to stop by when they're open, and so I got this. I think it's the first edition, because the book I had before was a paperback, a trade paperback. But this, yeah, it's the first edition, because it's in Roman numerals of the publishing date. So I can't read that, but 53 maybe 63. I don't know, 1950 or 63, something like that, or 80, 68, or well, don't even get me trying. 58 or 68, I don't know. But anyway, I do know what the book is about. Gladys Taber wrote a book about her father, and he is a remarkable character. To say he really is a character. But he took his family for a loop, and where they were living, he strung them all over the place, and often in not good living conditions. And the one situation that stands out in my mind is when they moved to Mexico, and the mother got sick with from drinking the water, and they were had bugs all over the place, and it was just horrible to read about. And the father is just very much in his own world, no matter where he's living, no matter what he's doing. He has blinders on. He can't, I feel understand or even see what the people around him are feeling and doing. He's just so focused on what he has going on. But they end up in Wisconsin at a college town, and he's a professor there, and it's just their life and what they're going through. He's constantly getting into things and upheaving everything. And I got mad at him at so many points, because he's just very stubborn and very strong-willed, and the mother just has to deal with it, just keep the peace, and Gladys, she starts, fighting against it a little bit as they go on, and like she has to like prove her point, like kind of like shake him in a way of like, this is what I want to do, or I don't want to follow what you're telling me to do. And it took him a long time to I feel like recognize that. But overall, this I feel like it's very much a book of its time. Like the people, the father in here is someone I feel like you might not see as a father today in today's world, but I feel like reading about him, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole a category of fathers back in Gladys Tabor's upbringing that were like this. Let's see here. And then let's see if you had any other physical books. No, for July. And so then the ebooks that I wanted to talk about here. Let me get my okay. So we have Closed Pegs by Susan Scarlett, and this is a book I've had on my TBR for quite some time, and I really like these editions. Like I think there's like 10 or 12 books in this, not series, but published books by Susan Scarlett, and they all have this like house design to them, and with the old-fashioned artwork. I really enjoyed it. And so this is about a woman who is a seamstress and gets pulled down to from like the bottom or up floor to go and be a model because she just happened to have the right stature for when they all of a sudden needed a model because they're working at a clothing store, and they have to model the clothes for the different customers. So instead of the customer grabbing some clothes and going into the changing room, the fitting room, to see if they fit and they liked it, way back when, I guess, they had models that were walking around like so like I said, I wanted a green dress. Then instead of me getting handed the green dress to try on, the model would put it on and walk around. And so this is her story of coming into that world and the difference between, between her old and the new. But then also because now she's face to face with the clients, and so she's introduced to the money, the wealth class of the society. She gets the attention and gets to know some of these wealthy people, and how does that where's of course there's going to be conflict between that and her average everyday life that she has and she's living, and the people that she encounters in her job don't realize that the world she's her background and all of that. So yeah, I really like this book, and I for sure want to continue on with the series. And the next book is going to be a book focusing on in September. And then we have Betsy Tacy by Maud Hart Lovelace. This is a reread for me. I felt like I was due for a reread because it's been a quite some time since I read these books, and I was like, as we're getting in to the fall months, I think of like children's books because I'm thinking of going back to school and that whole mindset. And so I'm not gonna go into too great detail about this, but this is about Maud Hart Lovelace. She told stories to her children about her upbringing, and this is like a fictionalized version of that. And so Betsy and Tacy are living in Deep Valley in Minnesota, and they are very young at this. And this is the opening book. I think they're like 5 or 6 years old, and it's like how they met and just the hijinks they get up to as children, and then as the friends that they're making at school. It's just a nice series, and I want to continue on with that one. And then a not so nice book that is one of these books that stuck out in my mind. I was talking about the beginning of this that stuck out in my mind a couple months after I read this book. Now that we're in September, because of just the material. I don't read true crime or anything like, or really anything related to this subject. But this is Killer on the Road by Ginger Strand. It says Violence and the American Interstate. And this is part of the Discovering America series. I haven't read any of the other books in this series. But this is all about serial killers and how the interstate system, the roadways, when that was introduced, how that changed things. And it talks about, before the interstate, what the serial killer history was with the highways, and then with the interstates. And I just found it absolutely fascinating. And again, I'm not a true crime reader, just the subject of like a nonfiction book is what pulled it to my attention. But yeah, as far as like from my not background, but my experience with this subject, I thought this was a really, really good book. not something you want to read. If you, one second, Fable. She's over here in the corner. I don't know what she's eating, but you need to keep an eye on her. But yeah, this is just, if you're interested at all in the subject, give it a try. I thought it was also, if you're not interested in the serial killer part of it, she does go into a lot of detail on how the interstates came about, like the proposed plan and the different cities that were against it and things like that. So it's just a very overall interesting book. And then let's see here, for August, I read 22 books, and so this one I broke down more of what I was reading. So I read 6 of the books off my shelves. I read 12 ebooks and 4 audiobooks. 20 were fiction and 2 were nonfiction. So I was really honing in on the Garb August books because that was the big reading event of August that I was focusing on. And so for Garb August, I mainly read older children's books, and I read a couple of like the Sweet Valley High books, and I read thrillers and things like that, and romances and the category romances. That's what I focused on for Garb August. So my favorite Garb August book was The Babysitter's Club, Christie's Great Idea. This is book 1 in the Anne M. Martin series, and this is a graphic novel adaptation by Raina Telgemeier. I found this at a little free library in the month of August, and so I wanted to give it a go. I read another book in the series, the graphic novel series, like book 5 or 6 a couple of years ago. But here's the artwork for that one. And that one was like by a different artist, because I remember they didn't look exactly like this. Here's the flyer that they came up with when they were creating the Babysitter's Club. Yeah, the Babysitter's Club, the flyer for the different parents to use to get the sitters. So this, I don't feel like it needs much introduction, but this is about a group of kids who decide they feel like they're growing a little bit apart as they're getting into middle school. So Christy, her great idea is to set up a Babysitter's Club. That way they have frequent meetups, a reason to get together as a friend group. Then also they're helping the parents, because instead of having to call around to each of the kids for babysitters, they can just call one phone number at specific times during the week, and then they have a couple babysitters to pull from. So yeah, this is just a cute a story to read, and I did like the graphic novel format, although I of course like the book better than the graphic novel. But this is, I feel like, a good way to get kids into reading the series and exposed to things like that. And then let me see here, for my favorite fiction book outside of the Garb August books was another children's book, and this is by Beverly Cleary, her book 15. And on Goodreads, I saw this was marked, let me turn it down the brightness a little bit. This was marked as one of, I think it was like First Love or Love series by Beverly Cleary. I can't remember the name of the series. But when I was looking at the books themselves, I didn't see anything marked on there related to that. So I don't know if it's something Goodreads had put together, or what. They're kind of like her YA, her young adult series, where most of her other books are written for children. And she has a couple of nonfiction books that I've read as well about her memoirs of her life. But I read one other book in this series, and this is the second YA book I've read by her. And this is about a girl who's turning 15, and it's very much like a timepiece, like the Gladys Taber I was just mentioning, where they're going, the boy and the girl are getting together at the local soda shop and having like chocolate malts and things like that. And the girl is so excited to bring the boy and show him off to her friends, and so when she goes on her first date, she decides, oh, I don't want to get a chocolate soda, I have to get coffee, like that. Like that's going to show that I'm an adult. And so it's like the charming little ways that teenagers are trying to represent being an adult. And so I just thought it was a very charming and cute story. The other one I read by her a couple of months ago, it had an ending that was like, it was like, I don't want to give anything away, but for that one, it didn't have the sweetheart ending like this one did. This one had much more of an ending of what you would expect compared to that other one. And then, let me see here, the nonfiction book I chose as my favorite, since I only had 2 books to choose from, so it was easy to select. And so that is Square Haunting: 5 Writers in London Between the Wars by Francesca Wade. I heard about this here on BookTube years ago when this book first came out, but I had never gotten around to it. It's a book I had like saved to read and as a library book, and so I was like, oh yeah, I see it sitting there. I was like, I need to get to that, and so I listened to this as an audio book, and it follows, you know, the 5 different writers during their time when they're all living on this one specific area of London, and I thought it was like so interesting to hear about these, you know, all these different authors during the same exact time period, the same exact space. So it was like a mini biography of all these different writers during that time. And what I'm thinking of, like, you know, Virginia Woolf is the main one that I was familiar with. So those are all of the books, not all the books, my goodness. Because I'm going, since I am covering 2 months, I didn't want to go into too much detail on every single book I've read over the last 2 months, but I just wanted to give a highlight. And so in the month of September, I'm going to be hopefully doing a daily video, and so I will be sure and cover all the books I'm reading in September. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, BookTube.